Another Monday, another Wardrill Weekly Meta Report. I am Sarv, your faithful cogitator. The usual note on sourcing first: everything I have comes out of BCP, so an event that ran on some other app is invisible to me and will not be in any of these numbers. 17 grand tournaments this past weekend and just under 1,000 singles lists. 7 fewer events than last Monday, but more lists than we had then, so the tournaments themselves were bigger. And the yardstick, before any of these numbers mean anything. 50% is what Games Workshop aims for. A faction above it is doing well, a faction under it is having a hard time, and how big that gap is tells you most of what you need to know. Right, let's go. Faction win rates first, Grand Tournament singles, sorted top to bottom, and there is a new name at the top, Chaos Daemons. 56.8 across 37 lists, up 6.6 on the week. Right behind them, Leagues of Votann at 56.2, also up 5, and Votann took the biggest event of the weekend, the Lone Star Open, off a field of over 300 players. Now, I want to be straight with you about what is underneath that Demons number, because it is unusual. There is no single build carrying it. Their most brought pairing this weekend was Cavalcade of Chaos with Shadow Legion, 8 lists, and that came in at 48.1, below the line. The high numbers are all sitting on 5 to 7 lists each. Plague Legion with Warptide, Legion of Excess with Warptide, Blood Legion with Cavalcade. So the win rate is coming off a spread of small samples rather than one build most of them are on. They did take a trophy, the WG August GT, on 5 and 0. Third is Emperor's Children at 53.8 on 50 lists, and they are the story of the weekend for a different reason, which I will come to when we do the winners. Custodes fourth at 53.4 across 59 lists, one of the bigger samples up here. Then a three-way tie on 52.5, Orcs, Dark Angels, and Space Wolves. The Orcs are down 5.6 on the week from 58.1, so they have come off the top, and they still took 2 trophies. I went looking for why, because there are 2 obvious answers, and neither one turns up in the numbers. The first is that Orc players have had enough and moved on. They have not. Of the Orc players from earlier weeks who turned up again this weekend, 10 of 13 were still on Orcs. That is a small count, and I am not going to lean on it, but it is not the shape of an army being walked away from. The second is that they abandoned a detachment. Also no, and it is nearer the opposite. The build that grew fastest was Equatorial Hordes with Freebooter Crew, 5 lists up to 16, and it is still the best thing they have at 65.6. What moved the other way is Warhorde, 8 lists up to 14, and it went from 62.1 down to 48.7. More people brought it, and it got worse while they did. Dreadmob is down at 32.5 as well. What is left is one growing build having a bad weekend, on top of a 58.1 that was always going to be hard to hold. One good weekend is not a trend, and that cuts both ways. Tyranids at 51.5, Genestealer Cult 51.2 on 14 lists, and Deathwatch on 51.1. And the rest of the board, Jukari and Thousand Suns are sat exactly on 50, which is where the line splits, so they open this half. Tau just under at 49.6, up 3 on the week, and Adeptus Mechanicus at 49.4 on 20 lists with an event win to their name. Necrons are the big sample down here, 47.8 across 69 lists, down nearly 4 points, and they did still win an event. Space Marines are the other one worth flagging, 46.1 on 64 lists, down a couple, and no trophy anywhere this weekend. Imperial Knights at 46.9 on 55 lists, also without a win. The 2 sharpest falls on the whole sheet are Eldari and Blood Angels. Eldari drop 8 points to 46.8, Blood Angels drop 7 to 46.4, and both of those are on 25 lists. 25 is where week-to-week noise lives, so I would not read either as a direction yet. 2 weekends is not a line. And the bottom. Astra Militarum at 45.4, up 4 points on the week, and that is 2 weekends running they have climbed. Death Guard at 43.1, up nearly 3, and they put a player through a grand tournament undefeated this weekend. Chaos Knights are last at 42.2, down almost 4 on 27 lists. Units next, and this is a pick rate segment. What share of the week's lists a datasheet shows up in, and where that has moved since last Monday. These are counted per datasheet, so something shared between armies lands on one row instead of being split across them. The Scout Squad holds the top spot for a second week at 11.7% of lists. Behind it, the Chaos Rhino at 10.1 and the Intercessor Squad at 9.3, both nudging up. Chaos Spawn is the sharpest riser inside the top 10, from 9th to 5th. But the movement I want to show you is Necron. Ophidian Destroyers climb from 36th to 19th. Scorpek Destroyers, the Scorpek Lord and Necrosaur Amintar, all arrived in the top 40, having not been in it at all last week. And these are not 4 separate things happening. Of the 69 Necron lists this weekend, 41 ran Scorpek Destroyers, 42 ran Ophidian Destroyers, and 28 ran both. That is 1 build filling in, not 4 units drifting. Which is worth sitting with, because the Necron faction number went down this week, not up. So the thing that is spreading is not yet the thing that is winning. Going the other way, the Blade Guard Veteran Squad slid from 6th to 9th. Ghazghkull Thraka fell from 16th to 35th, the Defiler from 2nd to 4th, and Virtus Praetors from 15th to 29th. Custodian Guard and the Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle Jetbike both dropped out of the top 40 entirely. And read the direction of travel, not the exact decimal. Force Dispositions next, and the caveat that always comes with them, nobody is made to declare a disposition at sign-up, so a chunk of this is down to who bothered to record one. Taken Hold is the most recorded at 31% of lists, and it wins at 51%. Priority Assets is next at 29% and 49.6%. Then Purge the Foe at 18.3%, Reconnaissance at just under 16%, and Disruption on 5.4%. Purge is the one to talk about. Its share fell from 20.6% to 18.3%, and its win rate went from 50.3% down to 47.8%. And there is something underneath that worth knowing. Purge the Foe is now the rarest disposition in the game to have access to, 42 detachments granted. Taken Hold is granted by 65, Priority Asset 61, Disruption 54, Reconnaissance 46. And that is a change, not a starting position. Ironstorm Spearhead used to grant Purge, and now grants Taken Hold. Might of the Moritoi, same. Coterie of the Conceited moved to Priority Assets. Dreadmob went to Priority Assets. Mordaka went to Disruption. So Games Workshop is pushing the scale here, and they have been doing it detachment by detachment. There will be other things in the mix too, some of it organic as players work out what they prefer, some of it knock on from the rest of the data slate changing what armies want to be doing in the first place. But a big part of the reason fewer people are recording Purge is that fewer people are allowed to. Quick word before the winners, a like and a subscribe genuinely move the needle here. That is the signal the YouTube cogitators go on, and it is most of how anyone stumbles across the show at all. And if you would rather have this in pieces across the week than one lump every Monday, it lives on wardrill.app. Faction pages, the disposition matrix, list checking, the lot. iOS and Android, links in the description. My Patreon supporters keep the lights on for this thing, and I do not take that lightly. Thank you. It means the world to me. All right, the winners. 17 grand tournaments to get through. Performance of the weekend goes to Jack Murphy, who took the Salt City GT 7-0 with Emperor's Children. 7 rounds, no losses. He was running Carnival of Excess paired with Frenzied Host on Reconnaissance. And here's the part I find interesting. Conan Jennings won Ragnarok GT the same weekend, 6-0, also Emperor's Children, also Carnival of Excess with Frenzied Host, also on reconnaissance. 2 undefeated runs, 2 different events, the same detachment pair, and the same disposition. Emperor's Children took 4 of the 17 trophies this weekend, the most of any faction. The other 2 came on Coterie of the Conceited, which is the detachment most Emperor's Children players are actually bringing. 98 lists across the edition on Coterie, against 40 on Carnival with Frenzied Host. But the Carnival pairing is winning at 58.3, where Coterie sits at 53.8. So the popular build and the winning build are 2 different detachments, and they have been for a while now. What I am watching for is whether people move. If Coterie starts shedding players week on week, that is the meta learning the recon style and shifting onto it. This weekend it went the other way. Coterie actually gained share, so I am putting that down as something to follow rather than something I have decided. Elsewhere in the winners, Mason Mutz took the Denver Fight Club Open 6-0 with Orcs on Equatorial Hordes and Freebooter Crew. Junior Athleger won the Lone Star Open, the biggest event of the weekend, 6-0 with Leagues of Votan on Hearthguard Covenant and Needguard Oathband. Jack Armstrong took the Kent Major 6-0 with Dark Angels. Before I leave the winners, the Win Rate Skeptics Special. Death Guard finished 27th of 28 on this week's board at 43.1, and Eric Salvador Alcala Castaneda still went 5-0 with them at the Baja Open on Deathlord's Chosen with Paragons of Putrescence. Low average, high ceiling. Never judge an army on its faction number alone. And the team scene, quickly, 4 team events reported in this weekend. The Juggernauts, captained by Lachlan Rigg, took the Watts, the biggest of them, at 40 teams and 144 lists. Slugfest Suicide Squad, Captain Matt McWaters, won the Grand Tournoi 5 vs 5. Frozen North, under Mike Vasseur, took the Last Chance MWTC qualifier, and Legio Veteris, captained by Israel Caballeros del Chaos, won the Shark Games team tournament. We have only been capturing team results for a short while, so the season view gets a little less patchy with every weekend we add. This week's report is brought to you in partnership with Onslaught Gaming, who take the same tournament data you are looking at and put it in front of their community every week. Links in the description. And that is your week. New name on top in the Chaos Demons, though spread across a lot of small builds rather than one everybody is copying. Emperor's Children took the most trophies, and 2 of them came on the same detachment pair and the same disposition. And a disposition got quietly squeezed by the detachments that used to hand it out. And it is a Chaos week on the dossiers. Chaos Demons on Tuesday, Chaos Space Marines on Thursday. After where the Demons just finished on this board, I want a proper look at what is actually holding that number up. Remember, test it on the table, trust your reps, and I will catch you at the next transmission. This is Sar from Wardrill, signing out.